Hello and welcome to Dig It. I'm Peter Brown and hosting the show with me today is Chris Day. Hi Chris.
Hi Peter.
And welcome to June in the Garden.
Yeah, don't they sometimes call it Flaming June, Peter?
I don't know, yeah. Obviously the sun is coming out, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's sometimes a reference to roses, isn't it? Because roses really come into their fore this month. So perhaps that's where it gets its colloquial term, but it's lovely out there, isn't it? It has been for the last few weeks, certainly.
Yeah, and the roses are definitely coming into flower. I was around a friend's house the other day and smelling them, and I just love the smell of some roses. They really are beautiful smell, aren't they?
Yeah, fantastic. And of course, with the Queen's Jubilee happening now, and it's all about roses because obviously some new ones have been launched for that as well. So we've got the Queen's Platinum Rose, which has been selling really well at the garden centre. So that's good news, and I'm sure there's more on the way.
And another rose I read about in the news this week was the one that's been created for Dame Deborah James, and she's been out to see that at Chelsea, I see.
Yeah, it was wonderful to see the pictures of that, Peter, as well, and obviously some of the donations from that rose, which I think was bred by Harkness Roses, who are responsible for some wonderful varieties.
Okay.
So that will be something to look out for in the garden centre in the months to come.
Yeah, because it was I just like the colour of it. I wonder if it's another fragrant one or...
I think it has got fragrance, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's definitely one to look out for.
Most definitely, yeah.
So it's been Chelsea Flower Show, hasn't it, this week, Chris?
It has, yeah, wall to wall with the good old BBC's coverage with good old Monty and Joe, and it's been interesting, hasn't it? It's been an interesting show. I think the gardens have been very plant focused again, which is so good to see. Plants are definitely back. A bit controversial with some of the gardens, especially I think the Rewilding garden.
Yep. That's the one with the beaver sort of work in it.
Indeed, yes. And I think some people are saying, was it actually a garden, or was it just a wonderful demonstration of what beavers potentially could do to our wildlife areas? But I think the message was very strong across a lot of the gardens, but that obviously bees are very much back into our gardens. And Joe Swift, of course, created an amazing garden for the RHS. He didn't get judged for it, as he kept saying on the TV, which was quite amusing. But it was a lovely garden.
And that's the one that Ainsley Harriet's sister went for a swim in the garden, didn't she? She fell in was it a rill or a...
Yes, a little bit of the water feature there, isn't it? And it just sort of goes to prove that I think that was the only garden at Chelsea which obviously visitors were allowed to walk around. And of course on press day, obviously allowed to go on many of the gardens, not all of them, but and it does beg the question, doesn't it? Are gardens sort of safe?
Yeah, are we going to have fences around the ponds next year? But no, it's nice to see that she's well and
indeed,
didn't hurt herself. Indeed, but you do question sort of whether it is safe for celebrities or whether they should be like the public and kept out of all the gardens.
Most definitely. And wasn't it great to see the Queen in her golf buggy around, going down there and enjoying the show too. So it was
massively, because she's cancelled a lot of appointments recently, and obviously the other royals have stepped in her place, but Chelsea is clearly one of her favourite things, and such a joy to see her there again and out and about in the public again.
Yes, and I think the BBC have been showing some vintage clips when I saw one night, and going back to 1952. So she's been basically, for the last 50 years, she's been going to the actual show on and off. She's not missed it that often, and I think obviously that's a joy for the exhibitors there.
And I see our friends at Malvern Buildings have done it again. Yes. Another gold medal for houseplants and shed, but no disco this time, unfortunately.
No, but it was the pictures of it were really good. There was lava lamps, Peter.
That's throwback to the 60s, isn't it?
Yeah, I remember them in the 70s, but I don't remember the 60s. But yeah, it was good to see. And of course, they picked up a gold medal and also the best houseplant studio as well. So well done to them, and some really good, innovative and clever designs with all the houseplant displays. In fact, one of them was showing actually fungi, decorative fungi growing in there, as well as the usual houseplant parade, which we're used to, and houseplants rotating round on turntables and all that sort of. But great fun, and I think it's become really now a permanent fixture of Chelsea, and so may it continue.
And I love the plant workshops. The grass is always greener where you water it. Oh, that's brilliant saying, isn't it? It's very true as well. Yeah. But their display of the table in the office workspace with plants growing out of every corner is quite inspirational.
That's good, isn't it? Especially after No Mow May, too.
Yes.
Indeed. And also, it's interesting, isn't it, Peter? With officially the artificial grass turf was banned from Chelsea this year.
Oh, they've banned artificial turf, have they? Okay, yeah. Fair enough.
So I think there was a bit of a dispute last year about it, and I think obviously because the RHS, of course, are pushing to sustainability, and of course plastics don't sit quite comfortably, they've now decided that plastics are banned in the form of turf. So
you can have a gnome, but you can't have plastic grass.
It seems so.
That's good.
It is.
And Chelsea this year, there seems to be quite a few, how can I say, extra gardens. There's a lot of sort of different size gardens, is that right?
That's right, Peter. I think there's 13 big show gardens, so these are the ones with the big budgets, you know, and they've got the pulling power of the television, hence that's why they tended to appear on the TV for most of the Chelsea week. Ones to note out there was obviously that rewilding garden we mentioned about the beavers, but I have to say, Joe Swift's bee garden was really good. I mean, it was very, very cleverly done. And but my favourite was Sarah Eberly. She had created this garden building for the future.
Okay. And what did that have in it?
Well, it had wonderful planting, but it had an amazing water feature, a massive drop of water. I think there's sort of 3 channels really high up dropping down to create that amazing sound, and it was the sound was quite baffled, so it didn't cause problems for visitors, but it created a really serene sort of atmosphere too. But in these other categories, though, there were smaller ones for sort of balcony and for sanctuary gardens. So these give the wonderful exhibitors and designers an opportunity to come to Chelsea for the very first time and obviously compete on a fairly level playing field. And there were some lovely ones there as well. But as I say, I think, you know, overall, I thought that, you know, what I saw on the TV was really good, and it really just shows, you know, the fact that people are recycling lots of products now. That they were included in the designs, and obviously there was lots of water there, which is great. And I think a general overall, you know, use of good plants, good design, and obviously making people happy, and I think that's what a lot of the plants and planting seem to do this time around.
Yeah, because picking up on the recycling, the Peter Seabrook garden, I understand that most of the plants in that were actually recycled and ones that had previously been at Chelsea, and that's a brilliant tribute to him. And
that's right. They dug up a few plants literally from the garden, didn't they, and brought them along. I think there was I saw a wonderful honeysuckle, and of course it was really fitting that they launched the Peter Seabrook Sweet Pea. Which was officially launched too, which was a lovely tribute. He often said when you listen to his wonderful podcast that the first thing he ever sowed as a young child was sweet peas. So they were very, you know, strong in his heart, and it was good that Chelsea was able to remember him in a very special way.
And what else have we got coming up, Chris?
I think June's a busy month, isn't it? And of course, I've got my next masterclass, Peter, on the 8th of June, Wednesday the 8th at 4, and we're going to be looking at roses. Okay. It's like, say, an idiot's guide to growing them, and I mean that in the nicest possible way, because people...
I better come along then.
People just ask, it's always the basic questions, but the thing is with roses, you can learn so much from each other's experiences. Certainly that's how I've learned them over the years. So it's going to be a good one. I'm really looking forward to chatting about them. And of course we'll have plenty of plant material to enjoy as well at the Garden Centre.
Yeah, because like you said, they're all in flower. Or just starting to come into flower now, and they do look beautiful, don't they?
Yes, fragrance, and of course they're so versatile as well, aren't they? From climbing to rambling to creating that wonderful hedge in your garden too. So go-to plants. And
then it's BBC Gardeners World Live.
Yeah, that's the next biggie after Chelsea, isn't it? So that's between the 16th and 19th at the NEC. And I always find it's a very relaxed show compared to Chelsea, which is obviously fairly formal, isn't it? And you get an opportunity to see some really good gardens. And I think people... tend to enjoy it. It's more of a buying experience, so you can stock up your plants there, which obviously with Chelsea you can't normally.
Chelsea's sort of show gardens, and this is what we can do. Whereas the BBC is more of a shopping experience, I'd say, and having a look at all these wonderful different gardens. But it does give you a good opportunity to compare things and see what is out there, doesn't it?
Most definitely. And of course it's an opportunity to do a bit of celebrity gardening spotting as well, because you've got all the celebs there doing their various turns, as it were, in the theatres as well. So there's lots of things going on So if you want to see your favourites, your Alan Titchmarshes, your Monty Dons,
Yep.
they're all going to be there over the week.
And then Sunday the 19th is Father's Day, so don't forget that.
Indeed, yes. So maybe put something on the shopping list, perhaps gardening orientated, perhaps.
Yeah, buy Dad a new pair of secateurs, or maybe a bottle of beer, or
or both.
Yeah.
And then we've got another show, and that's obviously going over to Harrogate again. That's the 23rd to the 26th of June. That's the RHS Harlow Car Garden Show. So that's one we were chatting to, obviously, good old Martin Fish last month. This is the one which he's actively involved in as well. So
is he judging at this one as well?
Judging, I think he's judging, and I think they're doing their little gardening question times as well. So
because that's his local show, isn't it? Yeah.
It is, and a lovely, lovely part of the world as well.
I do like Harrogate. It's very pretty, and the surrounding countryside is
beautiful.
Glorious, isn't it?
Fantastic spa town, isn't it? Yeah.
And then at the end of the month, our local sort of Blenheim Palace Flower Show.
Yes, it's a biggie as well.
24th
to the 26th of June at Blenheim over in Woodstock. I I went there a few years ago. I haven't been recently actually, so maybe I need to refine.
It's been, I'm going to say, is it 10 years or so now? It must have been going.
Yes,
It certainly seems to be quite
Yeah.
a big show now, and obviously it's gained in stature, as it were. But yeah, I think that's more again of a retail experience rather than a sort of proper flower show. Or
it's very arts and crafts, isn't it? Which is fine. Yeah, so plenty to be going on within the month of June. That's for sure.
I wonder if they'll have some of their honey for sale, because obviously that's the place where they found those wild honeybees, didn't they, in the woods there? And
yes.
Whether they managed to get any honey from them or not, be interesting to know.
Indeed, should be a nice action-packed month.
That's it. Excellent. And what news stories have we got at the moment? Have we got what are the best selling things in flower seeds?
Well, that's it. I'll dig it top 5. Yes. So last month we looked at vegetables. This month we look at best selling packet flower seeds.
Yep.
And yes, to do reverse order again as we normally do.
So what starts at 5?
Sweet peas, Galaxy Mixed, which is the one to go for, isn't it? Everybody seems to buy Galaxy Mix when they're growing sweet peas.
Is it a nice smelling one?
It is, good colour range. Yeah, nice blend as well. So you got the fairly pale pastel shades as well as the slightly darker ones, but all very very flowerful in their perfume, I would say.
Excellent. And the next one in at number 4, that surprised me quite a lot.
Yes,
I wasn't expecting it.
And yes, another sweet pea, and that's obviously Old Spice. Now, for some people of a certain age, Old Spice.
It's a lovely perfume. Grandad used to wear it. Yeah,
yes, I do remember.
Aftershave, isn't it?
It is. That's right. So I haven't grown that one, Peter, so I can't vouch for the perfume. I'm sure it smells somewhat different to the flowery version, maybe. I don't know. And then in third place, we've got a sunflower,
right?
Called Titan.
Yep.
And as the name suggests, that's a big growing variety, big stature, big sort of structural plant as well, but a big flower bloom as well. Yeah. In
at number 2,
would you believe it? Another sweet pea, incense mixed, which again I've never grown, but as I say, it's looking at the seed packet. I was looking at it the other day. It does look really nice. So a good colour range. And obviously, the mix and the blend is good for people who want to grow them as cut flowers.
Okay, and then the star of the show,
another sunflower, and of course, most definitely is the single giant sunflower.
Okay,
and that's the one. Certainly, when we talk to schools and we give seeds out to, if Mr. Fothergills are very kind to give us some seeds, it's always that variety of sunflower. It's the most reliable.
Yeah, it does well, doesn't it?
It did, yeah. And the birds love it as well.
Excellent. And has anything else caught your eye in the news this week, Chris?
Yes, something I saw in Garden News. Plants can now grow in moon soil.
Right, okay.
So some work done by the University of Florida has found that just a small amount of moon soil...
peat-free moon soil.
I would hope so.
Excellent,
yes, with a few added nutrients, will allow seeds to germinate. This is the first time it's actually ever been done. So it might sound a little bit strange because we know that most things will grow in things like perlite and vermiculite with a bit of water. However, obviously the actual composition of the moon soil is obviously good, and what they've done is they synthesised that as well. So they've actually copied the elements to do that. And I think this is all for planned moon exploration, or maybe one day when we do eventually live on the moon, when when the UK becomes too crowded, I don't know. We have to do that. But no, I mean, it's interesting insight. And the fact that it's the first time it caught my eye.
Definitely.
Yes.
Very interesting. That's great.
Mm.
And trees and woodlands are hitting the headlines again, aren't they?
They are, yes. I think a combination of what's obviously happening with the Queen's Green Canopy campaign, which is obviously getting momentum, especially now. And it was interesting to read, Peter, that over 1 million trees have already been planted this spring, which is amazing.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
excellent.
And I think we are certainly at the garden centre here, and I'm sure other garden centres in the same boat. We are getting approached to supply trees in various sizes for these campaigns later on in the year. So I suspect there's going to be a lot of momentum, to come.
And Prince Charles has been walking in some woods again?
He has, yes. Quite a high-profile visit. So they've basically created a new list of ancient trees and woodlands under this umbrella of the Queen's Green Canopy, and it's 140 ancient trees and woodlands are listed. Right. So if you go to their the website, which we'll put on the show notes, you can find some really good places, perhaps local to you, which are on that list.
Yeah, because from round here we've got Burnham Beeches, which is a bit further south, but it's not a million miles away. Have you been there?
I haven't actually. It's not been on my list. I've been to quite a few beech forests, but not that one actually. So I need to go down there.
Maybe we can go there and hunt some beech nuts.
Indeed, follow the squirrels, perhaps. Yes. But yes, there's some wonderful historic woodlands to visit as well. Quite a lot of those tend to be up in and obviously over in Wales and in the Highlands, as well as obviously more local to us here. So so plenty to think. So it's really good. I mean, I think a lot of these tree areas, sometimes promotions like this, publicity like this, can make us all aware of those wonderful forests around us, and it's good to explore them, especially as we're coming up to the summer.
It is, and I think that's the benefit of woods in the summer, isn't it? It's often quite cool. If it's a really hot and sunny day, the shade of a nice big beech tree or a walk in the forest is always a nice thing to do, I think.
Most definitely, yes.
And Wolf Garden are now over 100 years old, or 100 years
Indeed. Old. Yeah, and it's such when you look at it on the shelves, it's such a modern product, isn't it? And
Is it? Do you think it's always been that clip-in system, or is that a relatively new invention when plastic got invented?
I suspect so. It's probably an innovation, isn't it, from their brands? But it's always a great virtue about Wolf products, and I've got one or two at home.
Yep.
Is I can always find them in the garden. That bright colour.
They're nice and easy to see. Yep. I find them really decent quality. I mean, I've got a trowel of theirs and a long handle and a little fork, and it's great being able to swap between the different tools, and also the fact that they are, I would say, very, very reliable and decent quality. Yeah, they're not cheap, but they are.
It's once you buy into the system, it's like anything, isn't it? You're there. Yeah. But certainly for space saving, if you're really conscious about space saving in your garden shed, you don't need lots of handles and things. You can, usually 2 handles is enough you need. And the great virtue, I use one of their loppers, and I just find it's robust. It feels strong and reliable, and I think when you buy it and you're spending a reasonable amount of money, that's what you should really put on your shopping list.
Yeah, because you've got, I'm saying extending one that I've seen wandering around the garden centre here, but we're using it here on the site, and it's enormous. I mean, it seems to go up and up and up.
Yes.
If you've got a tall tree that you need lopping, I'd certainly recommend one of those. Yeah,
I think the sort of the telescopic functions of a lot of garden tools are really good now, and the mechanisms are there are a lot more reliable than perhaps they used to be. But, so certainly, well done, Wolf, for hitting that magical 100 years.
It's brilliant, isn't it? And possibly one for your slightly older children if they want to take part in a scientific study. I see Bug Life have got a little challenge going on, haven't they?
They have, yes. So basically they wanted to continue to do a survey to encourage us all to monitor the UK's insect populations. Obviously they are depleting at a really scary rate, aren't they? I mean, one of the stats was suggesting that 34% decline in the last decade
There's bugs, but that's bugs getting splattered on your number plates.
Yes, so not actual losses, but
Maybe it's because we're all driving slower now because there's so many cars on the road.
Yeah, maybe.
Or maybe the bugs are really dying. I think that's reality.
It is, and that's really quite worrying, isn't it, Peter? Yeah, that's the case. But there is some good news that as individuals we can sort of take part in this year's survey. So between the 1st of June and the 31st of August, you can download the Bugs Matter app. And we'll put the link on the show notes.
Yeah, that's from buglife.org.uk, isn't it?
Indeed, yeah. So, why not? Let's do our bit just to get that information across, and let's hope to try and save a few more bugs along the way. But as gardeners, of course, we're doing so much anyway in our gardens. We're planting the right plants with our bee-friendly and pollinators. So let's continue to do the good work.
Yep. And what jobs should we be thinking about doing this month then, Chris?
Well, I don't know about your garden, but mine, the weeds are making their presence very much known.
Definitely. The allotment's got a good crop of weeds coming up on it, although I must say I've been very good this year and I've tried to sort of get the hoe and the spade and sort of turn the top of the soil over just to stop the weeds growing quite so quickly.
Good, and that's the thing. Your hoe really should be your best friend at this time of the year. You keep it going between the rows. More difficult between borders, though. I do struggle because you could be really quite careful, especially as things are starting to appear now. Some late things like some of the lilies are starting to appear. So, but a nice sharp hoe, keep it moving, and make sure you work around your plants as best you can, but obviously removing the plants at soil level and then letting them naturally die.
Yep.
It was a good way of then obviously improving your soil. You don't need to not necessarily go along and clear that away because within a few hours with the sun at its power at this time of the year,
it dries them out.
That's right.
Gives the worms some food.
It does indeed. Yes.
What's your preference, Chris? Is it a draw hoe or a
Dutch hoe?
A Dutch hoe. You prefer a Dutch hoe?
I do. It's only because I just like the fact that I can see the blade. And I can work sort of against the weeds, so if I can see the weeds, whereas working, it's just a bit of a preference there for me.
I mean, I've got both, and I think the Dutch hoe is definitely better for when you're pushing into bits of grass and stuff like that, chopping them back.
Yes.
But the draw hoe, if you've got a lovely cared for allotment that I don't have, but if you've got some nice open soil with just the odd weed in it, I think the draw hoe is my preference. But it's different tools for different jobs.
Indeed, But whatever you've got, make sure you keep it nice and sharp. So have the sharpening block handy there to keep it in pristine condition, and obviously a bit of oil to keep it
stop it rusting.
Indeed, yes.
That's it. And obviously the other thing we learnt about sharpening blades was lawn mowing.
Of course.
With our Swords of Grass podcast a while back. That was a very interesting one. And obviously some of us have been doing No Mow May. And obviously the grass is now 8-10 inches long.
At least.
The best way is to obviously cut it down in sort of stages, isn't it? So maybe get the strimmer on it first and cut the first 6 inches down, and
then maybe a week or so after go along and take it back down to perhaps the highest setting on your lawnmower, and then reduce it down. Yes, it needs to be a gradual process, doesn't it? Yes.
Yep, I think that's what we've learnt, and that should hopefully stop it looking too yellow, because if you go straight down to maybe 1.5 inches long, it's
not going to look very nice.
Really going to hurt the lawn a bit.
And I suppose the other thing is, Peter, the month of May has been incredibly dry. We've had some welcome rain. Yep. However, the drought sort of did continue, didn't it? So anecdotally, that might have held the grass back anyway. So it might not have put on as much growth as perhaps it would have done if we'd have had.
Years.
So that's hopefully So do a little bit of trimming and get your lawn back to some sort of reality again.
And it's vegetable planting time, isn't it, still? We've struggled a bit this year with the supplies of vegetables, haven't we?
I think so, It's been a tricky one, I think, because obviously we tend to use a couple of UK growers we've had to sort of look at what we can get hold of from week to week. And of course the demand, again, as we've seen throughout this spring, has been high on a lot of vegetable plants. So and maybe a good reason, I suppose, Peter, to grow your own varieties from seed, especially if it's varieties you really want to grow. You know, I'm thinking here of things like tomatoes and maybe peppers and courgettes and things like pumpkins, which are, you know, you can get some good name varieties out there, but to actually get the seedlings of them can be more tricky.
Yeah, because I think that's the benefit of seed, although possibly a bit late for this year, maybe for next year if you're thinking about it, is that the varieties you can get obviously far exceed what you're going to find in the vegetable tunnels and the sort of seasonal tunnels in garden centres. So
yes, and it's good to see. I mean, we've got I noticed with our pumpkins and courgettes all planted now, and that's the thing. It's anything which is really quite tender. So your sweet corn, obviously if you're putting peppers and aubergines outside.
Yep.
I mean, really, once we get into the early part of June, we're pretty safe with frost now. I mean, May wasn't too bad as it turned out, but you know, as we know.
Yeah, my runner beans are doing well. They're about 3 inches tall now, so they're starting because I've grown all my runner beans this year in fibre pots.
Okay.
Thought I'd give them a go, and to be fair, they seem to be doing well. Now, the bottoms of them don't have any holes, and the roots are sort of starting to grow through. Is it best to sort of split a little bit of the base up so the roots get a nice, easy exit out and then go down into the soil, or does it not make any difference?
I don't think it makes an awful lot of difference. All I would say is, Peter, when you're planting your fibre pots, just make sure they are really well moistened, because once they go into the soil, if they go in dry, then of course the roots are going to really then struggle to push through into the soil. So really rehydrating and making sure they're nicely moistened just before you plant, and then give the plants a really good water so the surrounding soil's nice and damp.
Yep.
You're halfway there. But the ones I actually used those this year, strangely, for my geraniums, my pelargoniums, seed raised ones, which I got here from the Kinder plant range, and I put a little bit of compost in the bottom of my seed tray, so they were set in there.
So they start growing through.
Yes.
That's a really good idea.
And so when I came to plant them out and put them into pots, which I was doing last week, they had a root system all the way through. So in a way they were already connected, if you like, to the soil.
Yeah, to the outside. That's a really good idea. I might try that next year.
Yeah, it seemed to work for me.
I like them as an idea, though. It's sort of no plastic, but also, I mean, the other thing I grow them in is old toilet roll tubes.
Perfect, yes.
I put a little bit of kitchen roll in the bottom and a wooden skewer through to hold the toilet paper in place, and fill it up with compost and stick the beans in the top, and off you go. The children's like it as well. It's a nice way to recycle them. Yeah,
and I'd say that with a toilet roll, they're going to break down really, really quickly, aren't they? Because of the type of cardboard used there. So, but again, if you're planting anything, just make sure they're given that extra water, just to make sure that process eases the plant's roots into the soil nice and easily.
Nice and easy. It's a good idea. And I planted my hanging baskets this week as well, Chris. I managed to get a couple of the pop-in ones from kindergarten. Mm-hmm. And now, again, you probably tell me I've done this wrong. I took them out of the plastic tub that they came in. I looked at the base and I thought, well, they've got quite a lot of roots sort of in the pot, and obviously masses of holes in the base, so they should be able to come out. But I thought it would probably be easier just to pull the plastic pot out. But then I read the instructions and found out no. The instructions say just chuck them straight onto a bed of compost and off you go.
They do, because the bottom of the container is like a grill, isn't it? So you've got lots of sort of slits, and the roots go through there. I mean, you can take them out, and if you do that, then you've got a really good container then to put your bulbs in the autumn. That's what I did with mine, and they're really good for things like your crocus and all those bulbs which perhaps the little rodents tend to go for. And squirrels. But no, you could do that. If you put them into a container and then you've got a bit of space around the edge of your container, then obviously you can pop in a few things like lobelia or other things to fill the gap. But generally, no, you can leave them as be. But again, make sure the pop-in is really well watered because of that reason as well, so the whole thing nicely balances moisture-wise. But they've been an incredible sellout. I mean, I know we've got a nice big batch in for the beginning of June, so if you haven't got your pop-ins, then now's the time to drop in and pick one up.
Because they're now doing them in sort of colour themes as well, which I thought was a brilliant idea. Not only are they instant? You can decide what colour you want in a month's time or so.
And they've got some great names. They do one Bollywood, which is obviously very, very yellow, very purple, very blingy, and they've actually one called Bling and Sophistication.
Sophistication look nice. I think I've got a Maritime one, which was blues and yellows, and it's really nice. Yeah.
No, they've really thought it through, and if you bear in mind that you think you're paying a little bit more for your container, but actually all the varieties they use are all vegetatively raised. These are plants grown from cuttings, so you're getting more reliable varieties, and that makes the display, as you'll find out, far better, far superior.
Excellent. And I saw we had some canners in the other day.
You can always tell we're getting to the later season, the bedding season. But remember, of course, a lot of people, have been going on holiday the latter end of May into early June. They come home, they've got containers to fill, so it's a timely reminder that garden centres tend to gear up for the late season. And often carry bedding. The bedding packs become larger. Should I say that you get more compost around each of the base of the roots of plants, so they become, I think, like super sixes. So you get a much larger plant than you would buy perhaps traditionally in the early part of the spring. So often that plant has got flowers on it already. It'll have a bit of structure, so you could put those into your pots and your containers, and you can be well away. And I think this summer as well, as we're celebrating a very special platinum year, make your garden nice and colourful, and obviously help those bees as well.
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
And pruning, we need to be pruning anything. Cherries, I suppose you could be pruning at the moment if you needed to.
Perfect time, yes. Yeah, June onwards is the great time. So if you've got to do any major structural pruning with your flowering cherries and your cropping cherries, now's the time you can go in with your loppers and your secateurs to get that right sort of shape. Now the sap's flowing well in the branches. And obviously anything spring flowering. So if you've, I must admit, I walked past my Forsythia. Well, no, should I say I walked into my Forsythia the other day because it had grown so wide. So that's going to be given a good cut back in the next couple of weeks. The reason for doing it now, Peter, is that you want to encourage lots of new growth, which will carry your flowers for next year. So anything you do this month and maybe into early July, you've got the salvation that you'll have the plant then producing the woody material, which will hopefully carry those nice strong shoots. So things like Weigela, spireas, all the popular shrubs which we enjoy in our gardens. Some of them are sort of showing our age a bit, sort of 1960s, 70s, 80s, but a lot of them are back now. I mean, spireas have had a major comeback over the last 2 or 3 years. And also, as we've just finished Chelsea, the Chelsea chop time is here as well. So if you've got your perennials, your sedums and your Rebecchias and those plants which get really tall and get very floppy, they can be sort of taken back quite well now. And you've got probably a week or two to be getting on with that job as well. So, and remember the adage, when you prune, give them a feed.
Yep. And what are we sowing at the moment then, Chris?
Right, so I suppose in the vegetable garden it's all about, isn't it, it's continuity. I don't know, on your allotment, when you start to get a bit of space, it's a matter of keeping something there, isn't it? So, I suppose usual sort of lettuce, spring onions, your radish. We had a really good crop of rainbow radish the other night.
Oh, right.
And I've never seen, I'm not a massive radish lover, I have to say. However, seeing them in sort of yellow and white.
I was going to say they've got the insides of the radish, rather than being white, is a sort of orangey yellow, isn't it?
That's it, and they're really colourful. They're really, really good. So I'll be sowing some more of those. And then, for continuity. And again, it's still not too late to get some French beans, and if you want to continue the successional sowings later into the summer. And then in the obviously in the flower garden, it's the things which are going to flower next spring. So your primroses, primulas, your Canterbury bells, your wallflowers, your Sweet William, all those sort of plants can be sown at a time of the year when we're quite busy doing other things. They're often things which are not sown, which is such a shame, really, because they're usually quite nice things to have in quantity. It come next March and April.
Yeah, that's right. And tomatoes, just thinking about them, I always get this wrong. Your flowers, you've got to sort of prune them back. You can't have tomatoes just going wild. And everything being left on it, can you?
No, with tomatoes, you get the sort of what they call the cordon varieties. So those ones you grow up a cane,
Yep.
and then those ones you take the side shoots out. So you basically channel all the energy into the main growing point. And then a lot of people grow the bush varieties, which basically you let them do their own thing. A lot of those varieties you grow in sort of hanging baskets and pots. So if you're growing like a Shirley or Alicante Moneymaker, all the traditional varieties, those are the ones you have to keep de-side shooting. You need to be taking those side shoots off regularly. And then obviously if you've got the bush types, then as I say, you just let them do their thing. And as long as you're giving them lots of tomato feed now every watering or every couple of weeks at full strength, then you're fine.
And just thinking about the cordon types of tomatoes, you want to get them to about 6 foot, would you say?
Yeah,
that's all to do with trusses and
that's it.
Taking out the top, is it?
Taking out the leader. So the height you'd take them out. If you're growing them in the greenhouse, Peter, I think once they sort of hit the glass, then you'd say, I don't want the plants to get any taller. So at that point, you normally allow the plant to then produce a leaf after the highest truss, and then you'd basically cut out the growing tip. So you chop out the top.
Yep.
So at that height, at the top of your greenhouse, you're probably either going to be sort of 4, 5, maybe 6 trusses. It just depends on the leaves. If you're growing them outside, you probably do that at probably 4 trusses, I would say, because you've got to think, are those trusses all going to develop a crop by the end of summer?
Yep.
You've got to be realistic. I mean, 4 trusses in outdoors would be a good result. 6 in a greenhouse would be equally a good result. So I think you've got to make that decision. But so you just basically take the growing tip out. What the plant will do, though, the tomato will still want to carry on growing, and it'll send out a new side shoot, probably just below that last truss of fruit.
Right.
And that'll become effectively the new leader. So you need to chop that out as well. So you'll have a permanent little war going on because it will still want to grow. It has what they call apical dominancy. It wants to hit the height.
Keep on going upwards.
Yeah, so you must stop it regularly.
Excellent. Okay, thanks for that, Chris.
Okay, Peter, on the subject of ponds, obviously with Chelsea, we sort of seen so many water features. But if you're creating a wildlife pond, is there any things we need to be thinking about at this time of the year?
Well, I suppose, plants are always the key, I think, to wildlife ponds, making sure that you've got enough plant cover. Now, I mean, generally, rule of thumb is cover about 2/3 of the surface with some sort of plant, and that'll help keep the water clear. Now, wildlife ponds obviously tend not to be that enormous, so if you're doing something maybe 1 metre by 1.5 metres, sort of nice little pond, try and get it to maybe a couple of foot deep, sort of 50, 60 centimetres deep if you can, because that'll obviously in the winter keep the water a lot warmer and give you all year round water, whereas if you only make it 6 inches deep, sometimes it'll get very, very cold. And also, I suppose the other thing with wildlife ponds is to make sure that the wildlife can get in and out. So nice open banks, nice sort of easy access for the birds to be able to get up and drink from, and obviously frogs to get in and out, and toads to drink in, and then hopefully you'll have a nice sort of colourful pond. Maybe thinking about colour, if you want to put a water lily in, that's brilliant for giving you surface cover, but be careful because some of the varieties of water lily get enormous. I mean, just thinking Nymphea alba is a white water lily, but just grows and grows and grows, and it will take over a pond sort of 1 metre by 1.5 metres in a year or two, whereas some of the pygmy and the dwarf sort of water lilies will only maybe get sort of 30 centimetres around. They'll have half a dozen or so leaves when they're doing well, and tiny little flowers. They're beautiful little plants, but I think just be a bit careful with water lilies, because some of them can take over the pond. And
thinking about my own little wildlife pond, Peter, I mean, I've got a lot of duckweed over the top now. I mean, it looks quite nice in the sun. But should I be thinking about removing some of that, or?
I mean, duckweed is obviously a plant that grows well in the in the water. It does get. If it's just left untouched, it will take over the entire surface, which generally means you'll have very, very clear water underneath it. It's a great sort of place for wildlife to live in, because the bugs and what have you live in the roots. So I'd say generally a little bit around the edges is no problem at all. If you want the whole surface covered, that's fine. But if you're going to take it out, obviously just use a fine-ish net. That'll pull it out, and then just leave the sort of catchings, as it were, on the edge of the pond so that the bugs can get back in the pond, because you do tend to pull out a lot of wildlife with the duckweed. Or the other option is sort of flooding the pond. If you can flood because it's floating, obviously it will follow the water out and get taken away that way. Right. But it's a bit wasteful of water. But if you've got a good water butt and
use water that way,
you can flood it that way. So that's the way I get rid of it. But yeah, it's a bit of a questionable one whether it's a great plant to have or not. I certainly like it. I know. Funny story, taking the dog out for a walk once along the side of a canal. The canal was absolutely full of duckweed. Dog didn't really realise it was a load of water underneath, ran off, jumped off the edge of the canal straight into the duckweed and splosh.
Oh, lovely, very nice.
The water went everywhere, and you can see the look of shock on his face. It was brilliant. But I think that's where it gets to a point where there's possibly too much duckweed. Normally,
I'll do a little bit of clearing. One final thing on it. Is it worth... I've noticed that some of the aquatic centres sell sort of snails for ponds. Yeah. How essential... Would they normally come in with your plants you buy, or is it worth...
Honestly, in my experience of ponds, you'll find that if you're introducing plants, you quite often get eggs on the plants from the growers and from the aquatic centres. So you'll get snails in naturally that way, or maybe birds will bring them in. Aquatic snails are definitely good for the pond and good for wildlife. It's like everything with ponds. It's amazing what appears by itself. And you just think, how did that end up there? And
indeed.
They do.
Yeah, well, I got so excited when I saw a frog staring at me the other week, and I don't know where he or she, where it came from, but it's so encouraging, and that I know now that I've got some good slug control for the rest of my garden, which is most satisfying. Thanks, Peter.
Great stuff. And just thinking about relaxing in the garden and sitting back and enjoying the fruits of your labour, Chris. So I noticed we got a new range of pizza ovens in the garden centre now. And
I did spot them, rather nice, very shiny.
Uni, is it?
Uni.
Uni. It's a bit of a weird name, but they look amazing. I like the fact they got little chimneys on them.
They're great.
Quite cute, aren't they?
Yeah, and I saw we did all the sort of accessories as well, so you can really go to town with your pizza ovens. So.
I had my first garden pizzas a couple of weeks back now, and I've got very fortunate to have a Weber charcoal pizza oven, and the temperature you get there, you can cook a pizza in my one, it's about 5-6 minutes.
Wow. Okay.
And it's done. You have to turn it, otherwise it burns. I think the trick to pizza ovens is getting them nice and warm, and Joe makes us a lovely fresh dough. So it's very easy to make, and they are, especially when you've got the marjoram and the thyme and the herbs around the edge of the patio.
Ideal.
Just being able to pick a few herbs and chuck them onto the top of the pizza is lovely. I do like a pizza oven.
And I think it's worth saying, we're into the wonderful month of June, nice light nights, getting out there, enjoy. It gets a bit chilly, then obviously you can, you've got a bit of warmth from your barbecue or for perhaps one of your...
patio heaters.
That's the one, patio, or even something a little bit more refined. One of the artesian,
the chimeneas. There's all sorts of different ways of heating your net.
I know, and then of course, just to add a bit of illumination, perhaps spotlight some of your plants as well, a bit of uplighting, and also give your garden a bit of extra wow. Just make it more of an adventure, because I think gardens can be a real playground at night. They can look really good.
Yeah, certainly. Talk about uplighting. I know you go to sort of hotels and they're generally lighting up the trees from the base, and they can look really nice. And certainly now solar lights have moved forward so much. You can do some really good things with solar lights now, can't you?
You can indeed, yes. And from security angles as well as you say, uplighting, or from just some of those nice, sort of fairy lights, just to add a bit of fun to your party.
Yep. And what show have we got coming up in a couple of weeks' time?
We have the Queen of Herbs on the show next month,
right.
Peter. Jekka McVicker.
Wow. She's a bit of a celebrity, isn't she?
Just a bit, yes. Obviously well known in the world of obviously all the flower shows, but also well known in the world of food, because what Jekka doesn't know about herbs really isn't worth knowing, really. She's
Yeah, because she's got an amazing range of herbs in her nursery, and I can't wait to interview her and discover a little bit more about that.
It's going to be really exciting, and of course, well known in the world of the RHS as well as being a judge over the years, and a real, very competent exhibitor as well. So it'd be wonderful to welcome Jekka to Dig It in a couple of weeks' time.
Brilliant.
Today's show was brought to you by Buckingham Garden Centre and Nurseries. The show was hosted by Chris Day and Peter Brown. The show was produced by Peter Brown. And our thanks to Chiltern Music Therapy for providing the music. Thanks for listening.
At Chiltern Music Therapy, we want everyone to know the difference that music can make in their lives. From parents and their premature babies in hospital to grandparents with dementia. We provide music therapy and community music services to people of all ages and needs across England. We work both digitally and in person in people's homes, care homes, schools, hospitals and hospices. Find out more at chilternmusictherapy.co.uk.